Anybody, anywhere,
It's time to take command.
The Cardiac Commanders are the Clutch Commanders!
With former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen.
This pass caught by Paulsen, the tight end.
And from 106.7 The Fan, Grant Paulsen.
Welcome in to Take Command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen. I'm Grant Paulsen. We are with you 3 times a week right after games, then a film breakdown and a film preview of the upcoming matchup, generally Sunday afternoons, and then we have something in your feed Tuesdays and Thursdays. Logan breaks down all the tape. You can check us out right here on Take Command, wherever you get your audio throughout the week. Download, subscribe, rate, review, do all that stuff. And, of course, watch us on the 106.7 The Fan, Team 980 YouTubes. Logan, it's Cowboys week, which has a little extra meaning for fans. I've always said in this era, like, players feed off of that some, but for the most part, the rivalry for players and coaches was when guys would be in the building for 15 years. Now that players play for both teams, now that, guys move around the league so much, it does not have the same meaning within the locker room. But I know that players understand that for fans it means more. And there is just added weight and added value to divisional games in general, which means that rivalries will never truly die.
Yeah, I think as a player, obviously, like, I was part of the new, like, modern free agency where guys are moving around a lot. And I think, the team did try to make or impart kind of a understanding of what the history of this rivalry was. Like, we'd watch a highlight video of some of the early games, some of the big games, the Monday Night Miracle, all these different things, and kind of just revisit kind of some of the animosity between the two teams. And I do think that there is, like, a real rivalry because it's a divisional game. Like, this team, these people, you play against them every year. Like, it means something different. And, like the Philadelphias, the Cowboys, the Giants, like it does mean something different because of the familiarity. And so, yes, it's not what it once was for the players, I don't think, but I do think there still is something to it. And I do think the organization does a good job of kind of reminding people what the history here is. Like, I was on the game plan with Coach the other day, and I said, "Hey, do you guys still show those videos?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, we want the guys to understand what this means to the community." And I think that's awesome. Again, it's never going to reach that fever pitch that it once was, but I do think that there is something still there, just not the same level.
So if you look at postseason chances, and it's too early to dive too deep into the numbers, but I bring this up for a reason. Every week, PFF, starting around now, has this table where they give you the analytics on chance to make the playoffs, basically, based on schedule and perceived outcomes moving forward. And the team that has the second biggest pendulum swinging game this weekend is Washington. Only Atlanta has a game that's bigger, where, the Commanders with a win would have a 56% chance of getting into the playoffs, and with a loss, it'd be down to 26%. Now, we could quibble over those numbers and how legitimate it is and all that, but the point is, this is, statistically speaking, a massive game, and it feels that way for them at 3-3. I know as a player, you probably view this a little bit differently than I would on the outside, as someone sitting in the press box, or certainly than fans do, but they have won every other game, win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. And now you're in week 7, so we're almost halfway through this thing without the consistency of stacking any wins here. And so if you're 3-4, they're about to go into the biggest stretch of their season, Logan, which is a 3-game sequence against the Chiefs at Arrowhead on Monday night, then another primetime game with a team off of a bye like you just played against the Bears, and a really good Seattle team with extra rest. And then you got to deal with the Lions, who are one of the best teams in the conference. So I think that's as treacherous a 3-game sequence as you'll have all season after this game. So I say all that to say, I don't do must-wins in October. That's not the game I play. It's not a shouty show here. We're not ESPN at noon. But this is a really, really big game for them. They have to try to find a way to win this game. They're also now 1-3 in the NFC. So some of the tie-breaking metrics from a wild card standpoint are getting squirrely too. It's just a game they got to have.
Yeah, I mean, as you get deeper into the season, the games, they get more important to a certain extent. And, as a player, it's the biggest game because it's the next one. And I think there's some other elements there in terms of rivalry, divisional, all that stuff is really important. but you can't be looking down the road, because like you said, like you look at that stretch, man, that is a daunting stretch of games that you have to perform well in. And again, this feels like a must-win game against a team that's, imperfect. I think they're really good offensively and they're struggling defensively, but you got, again, must win. I hate that terminology, especially this time of year, but it's the next one. It's the most important one. You got to find a way to win it. And I think that's probably, like, there just needs to be a sense of urgency about it. And I think there is. I think people understand in the building that this is an important game. And, players, coaches, again, we don't think 4 games down the road. We don't think about stretches. We think about the next one. And, putting your best foot forward for this one, and hopefully the team does.
I'll meet you in the middle, because I think the truth's probably somewhere in the middle of, like, what you're saying is perfectly true in the locker room. It's how they have to view it. But the reality is, it's not just the next one's the big one. Like, you can't go 3-4. You can't go 1-4 in the NFC if they want to get where they want to go. But also, I don't hot take it and kind of pretend like you're screwed if you lose either. I mean, it's October 16th. There's so much football left after this. And we're all basing this on, well, it's going to be hard with the Chiefs and then the Lions and the Seahawks. And it's like, they could go out and win any one of those games. And they could do it you were a part of in 2012, where you rip off 7 in a row that nobody thought they would, and you get into the playoffs, or 5 in a row in 2005, or 4 in a row in 2007. So we've seen it, but it just feels like the way things have trended, you got to win this game. It is a winnable game. There'll be narrow favorites. The problem is, before we get into the X's and O's here with you, Logan, one last kind of anecdotal thing to talk about. The Cowboys are going to be more rested. I mean, the Monday Night Football into travel, if you look at the numbers over the years, is really unkind to teams generally, compared to like their winning percentage, for the rest of the year. And then that situation, it drops off. So educate me on just how hard this week is and why that is, that teams are so much worse off Monday into travel.
I mean, you've covered the league long enough. You're losing a day of prep, and you're losing a day of recovery is really what it comes down to. And really, it's kind of like you're losing 2 days, because it's a late night game on Monday. So Tuesday, you're kind of getting back from the sleep deprivation, kind of getting the body right. And then you got to kind of hit the week one running on Wednesday. So you lose that Monday, Tuesday combo where you can kind of do kind of your body maintenance prep. And that 48 hours, I know it seems insignificant, but as a trainer and as someone that kind of in the other aspects of my life does physical fitness stuff, like that's a big deal for recovery, right? It's sleep, it's nutrition, it's kind of R&R during that time period, and you lose a day. And so not only are you losing a day for physical preparation, but you're losing a day of mental preparation. Because, like on Tuesday, I'd come in and just kind of roll through the cut up, not looking at anything specifically, but just get a feel for the team. You kind of lose that day too. So it is challenging. It is different. And, but I think the thing is, I had told this to somebody, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. It's like, nobody cares. Nobody cares about the adversity of this week. Like, they expect you to win the football game. And those guys in that locker room expect to win the football game too. And I think there's something very poetic about the Dan Quinn, anybody, anytime, anywhere, because that's really when you're playing in the NFL, there's so many different ways to give yourself a mental out or a mental release and say, oh, if we lose this game, it's because we're on a short week. No, that's not how we do it. You really got to be locked in and say, I got to put my best foot forward no matter what the circumstances. So if I got to, make sure I'm getting to bed a little bit earlier, spend a little bit less time with the family, like whatever that looks like, I got to get it done this week. And there are difficulties without a doubt, right? That rest and recovery cycle is extremely important for the NFL. The rhythm of the week is very important, but ultimately, like, fans don't care, media doesn't care. The guys in the locker room, they probably feel it a little bit, but they understand that we got to go out and win this football game. You just talked about how important it is. They understand that too. And and again, I say it's the most important one because it's the next one, but that's the thing, right? Is there is no universe after this game. We got to win this one to win the next one. And I think, like, again, if you just kind of attack it with that mindset, don't give yourself an out. Just say, hey, like, no matter what, got to put my best foot forward. I think that's the way you got to attack it. And again, it's not fair. It's not right, whatever it looks like, but we got to get it done.
Take command, Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen, Cowboys week, as the Commanders get ready for game number 7 of this season. It's on the road, 425 in Dallas. It'll be nationally televised with your A-team, Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady, on the telecast this week. All right, Logan, let's get into the matchups. We'll start with the Washington offense. I mean, the Cowboys, for the record, this is as bad a defense as there is in the league right now. They give up 412 yards per game, but they're also the number 1 offense in the league, they move the ball for 388 yards per game. So this is going to be an up and down the field yards and points fest here. In fact, the over-under for this game is 54 points, which is like the highest you're going to see in an NFL, pre-kick number. I mean, that feels like it's some Big 12 game or something crazy. I don't think the anticipation is that the punters will even show up. Over under half of a punt maybe in this game. But starting with the Dallas defense, I mean, the numbers are dreadful. Now, I know the Bears had some problems coming in and then looked a lot better. They obviously had extra week to prepare, plus they got 3 starters back. So, it's not like the Cowboys have those things going for them, but they are 32nd in yards per game, 30th in yards per play. They're 25th against the run. They're 31st against the pass. They're bottom 5 at picking you off. They're bottom 8 at getting interceptions. When you watch this team, what do you see?
I mean, a lot of that stuff. I think so. Let's talk about this because I've gotten this question a bunch. So basically, like there seemed to be a formula that the Bears were able to employ to slow down the rushing attack and really limit the explosive plays of the Commanders' offense. They kind of got in these 8-man boxes. They brought a lot of line stunts on first and second down. They brought more pressure on third down, and they played more man coverage. That team prior to this last week versus the Commanders was a man coverage football team. They majored in that. They wanted to be that. They changed the structure a little bit, right? They brought more kind of heavy box structure, more first down pressure, but they were a man football team the entire time. Eberflus has never been a man coverage guy throughout his career, and he's a guy that historically has kind of bucked trends. And what I mean by that is there's a really good example. I want to say it was in 2022 or 2023. The cover 2 thing sweeping the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs are having their worst offensive output in a long time since Patrick Mahomes has been there, and they're going to play the Colts. And everyone's like, well, is Eberflus going to play more cover 2? Because that seems to be the thing that's kind of slowing them down. Eberflus came out and played predominantly single high, kind of did his thing, cover 3, zone coverage, and the Kansas City Chiefs lit them on fire. So I think like one of the things about Eberflus is he's going to do what he does. So like last week, for example, the Carolina Panthers are a heavy running football team. They came out and played 8-man boxes on, I think it was 15 or 16% of the snaps. Like he knew what was going to happen. He wants to do what he wants to do. And it does feel like when you watch the film that he's kind of trying to mold and fit personnel to his scheme as opposed to the other way around. And so to me, like that idea that they're going to come out and do what the Bears did doesn't seem to fit historically with the way Eberflus has approached games, and doesn't seem to fit with what they've done through the season thus far. So to me, they're going to come out and they're going to play 80% zone coverage. They're not going to pressure a ton. And historically, when you look at how Jaden Daniels has played against those teams, the most recent example is the LA Chargers. He's going to dice you up because if you can't get pressure with 4, which they don't have a great pass rush at the moment. They got Sam Williams, Donovan Zaraki, who has a couple pressures on the season and is a young rookie player who's coming along. But Adigi Zua's playing fine, but pressure numbers are down. Kenny Clark is playing well on first, second down, but pressure numbers are down. If you can't rush with 4 and you're going to play zone, Jaden Daniels is going to do Jaden Daniels stuff. And so when you ask me what I think this game is going to look like, I think the Commanders are going to be able to do what they want and what they feel comfortable doing, running the football, quick game, play action shots, and let Jaden Daniels work that magic. And I think you're going to have a really explosive offensive output from them.
Would Washington watch that Carolina tape and say, okay, Rico Dowdle just completely destroyed them. Let's line it up and run the ball down their throat? Or do you look at that secondary and say, let's let Jaden eat, especially if you get Terry McLaurin back? The Commanders' offense, by the way, uses jumbo personnel with the extra tackle about 15% of the time this year. Nobody else is even over 12% of the time. They've run the ball on 44 of 55 of those plays, and when they take shots off of it, normally in play action, it's 9.3 yards per pass play, which is one of the best numbers in the league out of that look as well. So do you just go heavy and lean on them physically, or do you think you try to spread them out? Because it's kind of a, which way do you want to eat your meal? I mean, they're not going to stop you either way, probably.
Yeah, I think you can definitely put them in conflict. And I think the best game plans are ones that are diverse. And when this offense has been at its best, it's when Cliff has called the diverse game plan. We're going to get in different personnels. We're going to get in different formations. We're going to utilize the jumbo, but we're also going to utilize our 11 personnel. We're going to spread them out. We're going to force these guys to fit different runs because, quite frankly, when you watch those 2 middle linebackers, like they have a hard time fitting motions. Like there was a run that I'm thinking of where they run in like a simple, Carolina's running like a simple Wanda. So it's a weak side run away from the tight end. And I break it down on the Film Breakdown Show, which is on the Commanders YouTube page. But they run like an orbit motion with a cross stiff coming back. And I'll be damned if those two middle linebackers don't almost remove themselves completely from the gaps they're supposed to fit, run straight downhill, and then they hit like a 10-yard gain off to the offensive left there. And so to me, I want to show them different stuff. I want to make them fit different runs, because the two guys playing in the middle of that defense right now are guys that like Kenneth Murray, who again has a high draft pedigree but has not been playing very well. And again, like their starting middle linebacker, the guy that was kind of running the ship for them, Jack Sanborn's hurt at the moment. He was playing very well at the beginning of the season, and then there's been a really precipitous drop off after his injury. So I want to show them different looks, show them different motions. I want to go hurry up. I want to get their eyes in the wrong spot and just say, hey man, like you're going to misfit this run. And Bill's going to find the right crease. We're physical enough up front to get after you. So yes, you can run the football. Do it from spread, do it from tight. I think you should do it from both, because that's good offensive football. I think the thing when it comes to running the football is, I think in this game, your offense is going to be your best defense. So how can we possess the football, go on long drives, and really kind of maintain a command of the game flow? And so whatever the plan, you said how to eat your meal, I think you want to eat it in a way that keeps the other person from eating their meal as much as possible. So that's what I would advise in a game like this.
By the way, the Commanders' tackles, we've spent so much time talking about their guards because of the changes with Chris Paul on the left side, Wiley on the right side, and we're not sure if Cosme's coming back. I'll get a thought from you on that in a second. This could be the game where we see him for the first time. But the tackles are playing at a high level. We have not talked in a while about Josh Connerly. It was very early in the year where he was scuffling through a couple of games against some elite rushers to the point where there was the conversation being had. Do you sit him for a game? Do you give him a reset? Well, you fast forward now, and the Commanders produced 3 yards before contact on designed outside runs, which is kind of a tackle statistic the way that it's lined up. And then that's best in the NFL. They're also only allowing an 8% pressure rate as a combined tandem, which is 13th lowest in the NFL. So they're doing some really good things on the outside. On the interior, would you think Cosme is ready to go? And if so, do you plug him right back in for Wiley? How does that work?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they handle that, because I think because what is this? This is his second week since being right.
Yeah. Now he told reporters at one point last week, I believe, if he didn't play, and we kind of knew he wasn't going to, but if he didn't play this past week, that he would play in Dallas. But that was several days ago. We haven't heard anything else, and there's certainly Dan Quinn's been extremely non-committal on that.
Yeah, again, I think so. This is the funny thing about return to play is like he probably in an isolated vacuum is performing all of those single leg jump tests, single leg squat tests, single leg hamstring curl tests, the isometric tests that they do such a great job of there at a very high level. The problem with return to play for a football game is you have to kind of account for the volume of the return. So the only way you can get that volume is in practice. And so how has his practice schedule been going? We don't have access to that information. Dan Quinn's going to do a good job of playing that close to the vest. And I think what you've seen from this team and what you've seen from other teams around the league with people who are in return to play protocols, if the volume in practice goes well, they do some type of rotation pitch count thing on game day. So would it surprise me if he played this week? Maybe a little bit, but I do think if they were to say, hey, you guys are going to alternate series, you and Wiley, in this game, that maybe wouldn't surprise me, because then you're accounting for that other variable, which is the volume in terms of plays on the grass. So if he does come back, that's great. I think it's going to take him some time to get back to football shape and football form, but he's an outstanding football player, and they are definitely better when he's on the grass. So whether that's this week or next week, I think is, again, I'd be surprised if it was this week, but again, if he's feeling good and he's ready to go, let's get him out there.
When Terry McLaurin comes back, and it's possible that happens this weekend as well, we don't really know. If you've got insight on that, feel free to share it. But how do things change? One thing that was very noticeable that you and I both talked about on the last pod was their lack of overall speed on offense and pushing the ball vertically, or just having anyone that could threaten maybe vertically to put the defense in a bind, showed up because of the way that the Bears were able to play the run and stack the box, as you said, with 8 men. And squat on some of the things underneath. They really did account for Debo more than had been the case much earlier in the year and take him out of the game almost. I don't know how much of that was the heel, how much of that was their plan. But if you have McLaurin out there, it's a lot harder to do that. In what other ways do you think things could change? Like statistically, one thing that I saw in NFL Pro is Jaden Daniels throws into much tighter windows with McLaurin on the field. I think he just trusts him on like some 50-50 balls. He'll throw into tight windows at almost a 20% clip as opposed to a 10% clip when McLaurin's playing over the last year plus than since he hasn't. I think some of that is that they're doing more stuff around the line of scrimmage too and screen stuff, and the offense kind of comes back toward the line of scrimmage without Terry rather than pushing it down the field into the secondary. But how would it look different, and why do they need him back so badly? Give me some things you can get done with him that you're not right now.
Yeah, I think the number one thing is just like you get a player who can win more consistently in contested catch situations and in man-to-man coverage. And when you look around the league at people who get paid a lot of money, like Terry has been paid, like those are the things that change outcomes of games. Those are difference-making players. Like there's a reason that Jordan Reed, as a good example, was considered one of the best tight ends in the NFL. It's because he's able to win in man-to-man coverage situations. And I think when you just add pieces to the offense, guys that can do that, it just changes the dynamic. Because right now you're probably looking at maybe Zach Ertz, Debo Samuels in certain situations that can win versus man-to-man coverage, but everybody else, it becomes kind of a 50-50 proposition. And I think Chris Moore and Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane have done an excellent job, right? But there's a difference between a starting caliber receiver and a backup caliber receiver in terms of the physical presence that they bring. So you mentioned the contested catches, tight window throw. I think that definitely pops up. The short game, Terry's excellent in that, but also the stuff down the field is going to be huge because Terry is excellent at that, right? And I think when you can now move the ceiling of the defense farther back because of Terry's vertical speed, that's a huge benefit, right? So you're not going to get less single high coverage. And if this team gets less single high coverage, that means Bill Krosky-Merritt's going to have a better day. So just having an explosive player that can get down the field, that can actualize those deep targets, I think is going to be extremely valuable. So hopefully he's healthy. Hopefully he's back. Because again, I think his impact, even if he's not catching the football, will be felt very acutely in this game.
Did you think Debo was 100%? Like how much of his lack of explosive plays was the heel versus how he was defended?
Yeah, I think it was probably a little bit of both, actually. Initially, I was like, man, Debo just doesn't look right. He's having a hard time kind of really snapping it down at the top of his routes, which is going to affect your ability to separate. But also, like, Debo has never really been a great short area separator like that. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, because Terry's not there, because Noah Brown's not there, you're forcing him into a role where he's still good. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing Debo in any way here. He's still a very good football player, but he's not at his best. And I think that's ultimately what you want to kind of get back to. And that's, talking about Terry coming back or Noah coming back, just bringing one of those pieces allows you to put Debo in a more advantageous role. So I do think the heel is slowing him a little bit. I also think the usage at the moment, out of necessity, is not optimized for him. And I think, again, we've seen him perform very well, obviously at the Atlanta game, the Chargers game, very dynamic, very explosive. But I do think you want to, again, optimal usage seems like it would be slightly different in a perfect world. And so I do think it's kind of a combination of both those things.
Should be a really prolific offensive day. I mean, it'd be a red flag if they struggle to move the football against this Cowboys team. To that point, I saw on one of the fantasy sites where I have a team, like 2 of the top 3 rated quarterbacks this week are playing in this game. In Dak Prescott at home and Jaden Daniels on the road. Just the idea of the expectation is big plays and chunks and points. Mm-hmm. And that's also, again, celebrated by the idea of the projection of 54 combined points in the game. We're talking about like, the 30-27 predicted score is kind of what odds makers are seeing. I think very, very possibly both of these teams could end up being in the 30s, and it could be a big day for Jaden Daniels. Real quick on the Cowboys defensive personnel, just because we didn't talk much about their actual players. I mean, is there anyone there that you worry about or that you have to locate? On the back end, there's more familiar names, I think, to Washington fans still, because Deron Bland's been there a long time, had a year with Dan Quinn where he led the league in interceptions for an extended period. They still have Trayvon Diggs in the secondary, who's kind of a boomer bust, risk taker. Kenneth Murray, you talked about as a high drafted guy who's struggling at linebacker. And then up front, they got Kenny Clark from Green Bay, who's a former Pro Bowler. longer in the tooth now and a little later into his career, but he came over from the Packers in the Micah Parsons deal. An old friend, Dante Fowler, rushes off the edge for them on passing downs, who had 11 sacks for Washington last year. Anybody specific to target or really allow not to beat you here?
I mean, Donovan Wilson has 2 interceptions, and I've always liked how he plays. I do think when you watch that Carolina game, they kind of took advantage of his aggressive nature, in terms of trying to get downhill on the runs, trying to get interceptions. Trayvon Diggs is playing okay. There's the explosive play that he gives up to the Bears a couple weeks ago where he slips and falls down, and Roma Dunze hits him over the top for an explosive touchdown. Deron Bland has been fine, and I think, again, PFF grades, it's kind of a hot topic of discussion at the moment. Don't capture every element of performance, but I think they're a good marker. And like all these guys are in the yellow in the back end. And it's because when you go through every single play, you're like, oh, that's a good play, but here's an explosive play given up, or here's a missed tackle. And again, that's kind of reflective of the entire defense, to be quite honest. And so, yeah, do I think you need to be aware of those guys? Yeah, because once they've produced the ball in the league, like that's something you always have to be aware of. And both those guys have done it at a historic rate over the last couple of years. And they're good football players. But just right now, I think in the system that they're playing in, they're not being utilized to their maximum abilities. Up front, I do think, I think Adigizua is a good player. I think Kenny Clark is a good player. Again, I don't know if they're being maximized in the front. They're kind of in this traditional 4-down spacing. One of the things about Kenny Clark up in Green Bay is they kind of let him play nose, let him play 3, let him play 5 technique, and they were really able to maximize him. I don't feel that necessarily quite as much. Donovan Ezaraku, the rookie from Boston College, is a guy that sticks out to me as he's a very natural pass rusher and has a couple pressures on the year. Again, they only have 6 sacks, I think, or 11 sacks on the season so far. So no one's really producing in that area at a high rate. But if you're looking for, like, I guess what I'm saying is if you're looking for you're in a very flat area of the country, right? Very flat, very flat, very flat. And then when you get to a mound, you're like, oh, that's pretty good right there. That looks like it could be a mountain over there, but it's actually just a mound. That's kind of what we're talking about here. It's like no one has really stood out from this flat landscape definitively. But if you're looking for kind of sparks, I'd say the front shows some ability, but really there's not a lot of good stuff in this defense over the first couple weeks. Like it's almost painful. Like guys missing tackles, there's coverage busts, there's misfits on runs. It's kind of the compilation of worst defensive performances. And do you see the physical traits that these guys possess? Absolutely. Like there's a great example like of Kenny Clark, first play of the game versus Carolina, gets blown out of the bar on a double team. The next time they run the same run, he sees it, identifies it, stones the tackle for loss. Like, so he's good, but they're with those good high flash splash plays, there are some bad plays in there that you're just like, ugh. And that kind of characterizes the whole defense.
Yeah, that's how you lead the league in yards allowed, and you end up being, through 6 games, probably the worst defense in football. All right, let's talk about the Washington defense that has some problems in its own right to get fixed. We will get into that next on Take Command. Take Command. Welcome back. Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen. Subscribe, rate, review to the pod, wherever you get your audio. Watch us, 106.7 The Fan, Team 980 YouTubes. You can listen to me every day, 2 to 6:30 on 106.7 The Fan. And, of course, Logan is available for you on plenty of Commanders content. Check out their socials. Logan, the Commanders defense right now ranks 26th in the NFL, both in yards per game and per play. They're 17th against the run. They're 29th against the pass. It's been a big struggle, 7.6 yards per play allowed. They are bottom 7 at picking off quarterbacks, but they are top 5 still at getting to the quarterback at a 9.7% sack rate. So they're trying to get right. They're trying to fix some things after allowing a bevy of explosives to the Bears. And it's going to be a tall order this week because for as much as we can beat up on Dallas's defense and poke fun at whatever they are on that side of the ball, their offense is as good as there is in the entire NFL right now. Dallas moves the football. Dak Prescott is playing his butt off. 388 yards per game for them is number 1, 4th yards per play, 6th running it, 12th passing it. And this is a team offensively that gets the ball out. It's really, really hard to sack Dak right now, 3% of the time, which is 3rd best in the NFL.
Yeah, and Dak is really the story to me of this team and how well they're playing. Well, let me just say this: Dak. We're going to talk about him in a second, but I think the offensive play caller and the offensive play designer is doing an absolutely outstanding job of hiding kind of what I consider to be a very weak group in terms of their offensive line. Obviously, you get Tyler Guyton, rookie from Oklahoma, who seems to be struggling a little bit. Tyler Smith playing solid, but not as well as he's played in the past. And then there's kind of they've had some injuries. Tyler Booker may or may not be back this week, but the backup guard playing okay. And I think you feel some of their deficiencies, but you don't see them actualized often. So, like for example, in the Green Bay Packers game, there's a bunch of times where Dak is under immediate pressure, quick wins, quick losses, and Dak does a great job of getting the ball out with tremendous anticipation. And so I mentioned the play caller on first and second down, guys. Expect screens, quick game, boots, runs, like anything to manage and limit that offensive line's exposure. They've done a great job of that this year. And now let's get to the bell of the ball, and that's Dak Prescott. And he is Grant, he's playing some of the best football I have ever seen from a quarterback. Like he is doing a fantastic job. His ownership and mastery at the line of scrimmage, using hard counts to get the right route combination called, to get the protection set. He's throwing with anticipation. And that has blossomed with like George Pickens finding some of these explosive plays after the catch. He's distributing the football well. CeeDee Lamb's been out, but Kevontae Turpin's been playing very well. Ryan Flournoy, who was a kind of a later round draft pick from like directional Missouri State a couple years ago, wherever he's from, is actually been very productive. The tight end is Jake Ferguson, has been very productive, especially in the red zone. So there's all these pieces now where, like before, when you used to watch Dallas, it was like, oh, ball's not going to CeeDee Lamb. What are we going to do? Oh no, like the offense doesn't work. It doesn't feel that way now. It feels like everybody's involved. Dak's distributing well. He's playing point guard. He owns the offense. Whatever Schottenheimer does, like, he was part of that let Russ cook thing where Russ played his best football in Seattle. Like, he knows how to speak the language of quarterbacks, and you see him speaking to Dak, and Dak is playing at an extremely, extremely high level. Big time throws, anticipatory throws, different arm angles, the whole thing. It's been very impressive.
I wonder about getting CeeDee Lamb back potentially for this game for them. And if that were to happen, because it's possible that that's what's taking place, do you go back to like the CD rules? Remember, he was getting, to your point, 10, 12, 15 targets and was catching when they were rolling on offense in a different way, at least 8 and probably more balls per game. And it was, a lot of weeks it was 9 or 10 for 100 plus yards, right? But now in this everybody's eating kind of philosophy that you're talking about, it's almost been more efficient. So I wonder, you have Pickens on the other side. They're able to run the ball. I can't believe what they're doing in the run game with Javonte Williams, who was cast off from Denver. That's been really impressive to watch. And a lot of that is, as you said, like schemed up, and they're doing a really good job, whether that's Brian Schottenheimer, who I give a lot of credit to. I thought the hiring was odd, but kudos to him. Their offensive coordinator is a guy named Clayton Adams, who was with the Cardinals as their O-line coach the last couple of years, who I wasn't overly familiar with, but I'd imagine he's been integral to this as well. But a lot of credit to go around for that offensive plan and what they've done. But I wonder just what that would look like when they get CD back, Logan, because with Lamb, they're just they've been very different. It's been almost like, okay, everything funnels through him, and if there's anything left for anybody else, you guys can have the scraps. Well, now you saw what it looks like otherwise. Do you just kind of treat him like anybody else and let him get in where he fits in?
Yeah, I think that's something I've been thinking about, is like, does his addition hurt the offense? Even though he's a really good player and really dynamic and can win one-on-ones and win from multiple spots, like, does it hurt this ecosystem that you've built? Because I remember back when I was playing for the Bears, Alshon Jeffrey was out for a couple of weeks, and we were very productive offensively, 300 yards passing and very productive on the ground. Everyone was getting touches. It was really kind of a nice offense.
Who was
Alshon
quarterbacking at that time?
It was like Brian Hoyer and Matt Barkley, I think, were the
Okay.
quarterbacks, right? And then and Jay Cutler early in the season, but his injury kind of coincided with Alshon
Right.
Jeffries. Anyway, and Alshon came back, and the offense sputtered. It struggled because it now became, we have to get Alshon 10 to 15 touches. Alshon wasn't quite as healthy or back to the shape that he was at the beginning of the season. So you got to drop, you got to miscue, and the offense went from hyper efficient, lots of completions, to now we're punting a lot. We're kind of trying to manage manage Alshon, manage that lack of production. And I do think that is something that could happen with CeeDee Lamb because of Dak's relationship with him. Now, we'll see. I think early in the season, what was their first game? Who'd they play? Do you remember? It was like a primetime game, big time game.
Giants. Or sorry, the Eagles. The Eagles.
Yeah, the Eagles. I thought they did a good job in that game of distributing the football. Now, CeeDee Lamb dropped a couple footballs, and that really stymied their ability to win that football game. But I do wonder about the dynamic of that receiver group with CeeDee Lamb coming back, and if it negatively affects the production of some of these guys that have been playing so well over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how they operate in that way. All right, so defensively then, draw me up a game plan for Washington. Again, Dak's hard to get to and hit, so you're trying to find pass rush, but the ball comes out pretty quickly, and he does a really good job maneuvering the pocket from what I've seen as well, sliding around and kind of helping out his offensive line. Some of these things are veteran things, too, where it's like, yeah, if you get to be in one organization, I know it's not the same offense necessarily, but a lot of it in the passing game especially is for like almost a decade. It's weird how it gets easier a little bit. You see this with like veterans all the time. I talked to Kirk Cousins about this the last couple off seasons, but like just how much smarter and better and how many things you understand years into the league than you do early on. Even the really good guys like Jaden, like 10 years from now, what he's going to know and how he's going to operate is so much different. You see some of that mastery of the position when you watch Dak a little bit. Having said all that, what's the plan for you? How do you go about prioritizing?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a good plan. And if you do, like, I'm all ears. Maybe leave a comment if you have a plan to stock Dak Prescott. Because, like, you see teams like I thought Green Bay, they were like, we're going to heat you up. And like I said, I think they gave up 1 sack in that game. And there's a ton of pressure, like quick, fast pressures. And the ball's out very quick. He's throwing he threw this beautiful comeback on 3rd and 6, where it's like a 20-yard comeback. He's throwing it when the receiver's at 15 yards. He just puts enough air on it, kind of off platform, off balance, just floats this thing out there. The receiver does his break, and then it just dots him right in the perfect spot. And so that seems very challenging to contend with. So what I would say is, like, you do want to heat him up, but I think you also want to provide whatever indecision you can provide to him. And so what I mean by that is you look at kind of I think the Chargers game is a good example because that's the closest caliber of quarterback that we've seen so far this year in Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert started struggling when Joe Wood Jr. kind of said, hey, we're bringing pressure on 3rd down, to, hey, no, you think it's pressure, but we're actually in a soft cover 2 shell. And just getting him to pull the ball down, just getting him to think something different for a second is because really there's no margin for error with how the offensive line there is playing. If you can get him to double clutch something, the rush will get home. And it's just about, can you get that done? Because like everyone says, okay, well, that's the solution. Let's disguise and let's make sure we're in a good spot where he doesn't know what's happening. The problem is he's so good at the mastery stuff of the position, Grant, like the things that we just were talking about, like the familiarity with the offense, the familiarity with the league. Like there's a clip versus Carolina where he goes on the hard count. He identifies where the pressure's coming from, checks the route combination, slides the protection. They're picked up. They're not hot anymore. He throws a slant to Pickens, and it ends up being a 35-yard touchdown pass. And you're just like, okay, well, like they tried to disguise that. They couldn't, and Dak made them pay. So it's this weird balancing point of disguising, holding, showing tremendous courage and confidence in the disguise so that you can get the look you want and get the pressure you want or get the disguise you want, because he is very good at seeing stuff. He's very good at diagnosing it and very good at taking advantage of it once he knows what it is. So it's going to be a lot. It's a big lift. He's been playing extremely well. He's playing at MVP caliber right now. He's playing really, really well. It's going to be a big lift for this defense to slow him down.
I think Frankie Louvu is playing a lot better as this season's gone on. He's allowed the second fewest yards in coverage. Now they try to avoid him in space a whole lot. Off-ball linebackers with 100 coverage snaps this season, so he hasn't got very frequently. I think some of that is usage. But, early on, one of my issues was he'd missed a few tackles in space. He's cleaned that up. They're getting him coming downhill. He's rushing as much as anybody at his position in the league. In fact, Joe Witt kind of took issue with the question about how often Frankie Louvu was rushing last week and said, there's nobody at his position that rushes more than him, but it's 10 snaps in run defense, rushing the passer and in coverage in 4 different games this season. He's one of only 2 guys in the NFL that can say that. So they're using him in multiple ways. I've seen him coming on. I was watching the going to into the Bears game last week, I was watching the Hail Mary game just to kind of enjoy that, but also like run back some of my memories of the game. And Luvu was so damn good in that game. It was crazy. Like, he was everywhere. They must have highlighted him on the telecast 5 or 6 times with, like, little packages and things. And you just forget how good he was last year, but I think he's starting to get back to some of that.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I thought he had a very effective game rushing the passer last week, some quick wins, which is good to see. And I think they're utilizing him a little bit differently this year. And teams are definitely treating him differently this year in terms of how they're targeting their protection plans. Like, he's the feature. So I do think like he's playing better. It's good to see that. They're going to need that. And they're going to need his ability to rush the passer this week versus Dak. They're going to need his ability to disguise coverages and again, kind of be that question mark piece in the defense. So, yeah, playing better, good to see. And I think a lot of like the whole team needs to play well. This has got to be a team defensive win. Like, we can talk about one piece here, one piece there, but it's really schematically, how do you offset what Dak does so well? It's going to be very, very challenging.
If you're wondering about corner assignments, there's not a whole lot to think about here. I mean, they basically line Trey Amos up on one side and Marshawn Lattimore up on the other. We've got enough sample now, 6 games in, to know that Amos has been aligned at left corner at 93%, and Lattimore has been on the right side about 94% of the time. So you don't have to worry about traveling or anything. Whoever's over there is getting Amos. Whoever's over there is getting Lattimore. They're treating both of them like they feel equally as good, basically. The corners against their receivers, especially if CD plays, to me in this game, becomes a massive matchup. I think Lattimore's coming off of a pretty good performance in terms of, what was allowed and how much air he provided. But, it's a big test for Amos if you're getting a bunch of George Pickens as well.
Yeah, those guys are, I mean, if CeeDee Lamb plays, like, he's one of the top 5 receivers in the NFL, and Pickens right now is playing on another level, man. And I know he's got this reputation of being kind of a crash out, kind of just a volatile human being, but he is big. He's fast. He's athletic. He's long. Like, watching him, I'm just like, man, this guy is a special mover. He tracks the football so well. And his physicality is so unique. I do think that an interesting matchup thought is him and Lattimore, because of the competitive style that Lattimore plays with. Like, could you get Pickens out of his groove, off of his game, by being physically disruptive to him at the line of scrimmage and just kind of going to fight? Because I think you remember the last year when we played the Steelers, like, there's that interception that Quan has, I believe, and then Mikey blocks him or somebody blocks him, and then he just starts fist fighting that guy down at the 20-yard line while the return's happening. I think there's an element of that to his game that you can kind of take advantage of and maybe exploit. But they are physically very gifted on the perimeter. And then the problem is, like, they're pretty deep. Like, Kevon Turpin in the slot does some really good things. Ryan Flournoy, who we talked about, is a very polished, detailed, professional route runner. So, like, you just run into all, like, you're like, okay, so maybe I feel good about the matchup between Amos and Pickens. And I think that Marshawn Lattimore can contain or manage some of CeeDee Lamb's production. Great. So CeeDee's going to end up with 60. Pickens ends up with 35. But those other guys in the offense have been very productive, and they can beat a lot of nickel players in the NFL. And Mikey Sanderson is very good, but it's a tough out here, because then you move down the line. You're like, well, they have Jadon Blue, who's a very good pass catching running back. They have the tight end Jake Ferguson. It's just, you might be able to match up well on the perimeter, and I think they do match up well on the perimeter with this team. But it's just, they've got a lot of weapons, and they've got a guy who right now is getting the ball in the hands of the open man, and that's just tough because you're finding good matchups.
All right, that's the detailed breakdown of the Cowboys O against the Commanders D. We'll get you a prediction on who has a big game on both sides of the ball for Washington next on Take Command. Take Command. Welcome back, Logan Paulsen and Grant Paulsen. This pick segment is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. The number I'm looking at in this Cowboys-Commanders game is actually the first half total. So I told you the game total is 54. I think it could play to the over. It's going to be a shootout. But the first half is right at 27.5. And I'm actually going to roll with the under in that number because, number one, Washington, short week, comes out slow starts have been a bugaboo. They're obviously going to talk about that all week. They're trying to fix that. But I also think sometimes in a big game, important game like this, there's a little feeling each other out maybe that happens. I think 54 is in play, and I think both teams could get to 30. But I think as the game goes on, things can open up. Maybe you come out and you try to set some things up in the running game. And so I'll say under 27, maybe at halftime, it's like a 17 to 10, kind of situation, or 14-10, and 13-10, and then next thing the wide open second half gets you to that 54. But I like under 27.5 at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, man. I think I think the offense is going to be prolific in this game. And you look at the Carolina game, which had, for my money, kind of a slow start, and that was 17-13, right? Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think these
couple
teams
of big plays though, which could very well happen in this game too, obviously.
Right. I think that's what I'm saying is, like, when you're looking at how porous the Cowboys defense is, I think you're expecting an explosive play from the Commanders offense. And when you're looking at the playmaking horsepower on the perimeter, I think you're looking at a lot of explosive opportunities from those guys as well. So I would probably take the over on that, but you're the expert, so I'm going to defer to you.
I don't know about that. My FanDuel account would tell you otherwise. Sounds like Logan is on the other side of this one. Once again, that was the pick segment brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. All right, so who eats? We'll start with the Commanders offense. Give me someone who has a big day.
I mean, I think Jaden Daniels is going to absolutely ball out of control in this game. Like, that's the vibe I'm getting. He kind of came out of what I thought was a very good performance outside of the fumble. And the narrative this week is the fumble. Like, is Caleb better than Jaden? And he's the guy. He's kind of like got that Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant vibe to him, where it's like, bump it. Let me just show you what I'm about. And I think this is the perfect defense for him to show you exactly what he's about. So I think Jaden Daniels has an absolutely monstrous day against the Cowboys.
There's no reason why he wouldn't. I'm going to go Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt just to say something different.
Oh, look at you. Your guy. You're taking him. Love it.
Bill
just
season, 5.7 a pop, 60 carries. He also has a little something to prove, right? He's lost a fumble in back-to-back games now.
Yeah.
In the two games they've stud with him, but he's now getting almost all the carries. Just overnight it was like, we don't really trust him. We're not really sure. Everyone's got to touch the football, to like, now you get 99% of the carries. And it just happened like overnight while we were all sleeping. Now he's a grown up. Now we trust him. I never really understand that. It always annoys me, but whatever. I'm just glad that we got here and he's getting all the carries, and he's stockpiling some big plays. So against this defensive front, seeing what Rico Dowdell just did, I think he could go for – it's going to be a 100-yard game. I'll be very, very surprised if not, and maybe a career day for him where we're talking about him in the middle of next week. How about defensively? Who is going to feast?
Yeah, so for me, I would have said Dorrance Armstrong, but I'm not sure where the hamstring is at the moment. Like, that's something that's a little bit concerning to me, because I think he would absolutely eat Tyler Guyton alive in this game, just like his physicality, the way he rushes. If he doesn't play, I mean, I really think – this is something we didn't talk about in the defensive preview, or defensive review. Like, if you can win first and second down and play well on those downs and put Dak in more high leverage situations more often in this game, I think that is also fortuitous for you. So what I mean by that is, like, this team does such a good job of screening, keepers, quick game on first and second down. Can you manage that and get them into third and unmanageable situations, or get them off schedule and force Dak to kind of have to beat you in multiple high leverage situations? I think that would be really helpful too. In order to get that done, I think the defensive line needs to play well. Specifically, like, the defensive ends need to absolutely crush in terms of setting edges, being physical. And right now, because of the injury situation, it's like, who's going to step in and fill those roles? So in order to offset some of that, I'm going to go to kind of the two guys who have been incredibly consistent, and that's Javon Kinlaw and Daron Payne. Like, those guys, like, that front, our front needs to play really, really well. And I think they are capable of doing that. And to elevate kind of the injuries and the turnover at the defensive end position, I think those guys have to play well and have to be impactful in this game in order for the Washington Commanders to win.
For me, I think you got to turn the ball over, take the ball away from Dallas, because they're going to get theirs. And the Cowboys are saying the same thing about Washington, right? You got to generate a takeaway. It's really hard to do against Washington until they played the Bears. 3 takeaways for the opponents all season, and then it got to 6. The flip side, I'm going to pick a corner. I'll just say like a Marshawn Lattimore gets a pick, or maybe it's Trey a Bobby
Amos.
Wagner. like zoning linebacker thing where Dak doesn't see you trying to find a tight end and you jump a passing lane or something. But they need to turn Dallas over. I don't see them just lining up and stopping them consistently. So to me, Dan Quinn talked about this week. Like, he was asked about the defense again, and he's like, there's a lot of things that are okay. We're not getting the football. And I think if people are expecting, one of the things that gets lost in the conversation, I always talk about this with baseball. People will be like, oh, this guy's not hitting at all. He's hitting like 219. It's like, yeah, dude, the league batting average is 235. Like, it's not that bad. He's 5 hits away from being league batting average.
Right.
Average, And on defense, people are watching the defense kind of scoring it against like the 2000 Ravens or whatever. Like, oh, man, you're supposed to be giving up 225 yards and no points. It's like, well, no, in today's NFL, teams are going to score 24 points and they're going to put up 295 to 315 getting out of bed, right? So it's like, how many more than that do you give up, essentially? And so I guess my point is, it's about takeaways. It's about sacks. It's about game-changing plays. Can you make enough of those? And so I'll say they get a big interception at an important time, and I'll just throw Lattimore or Wagner out there as the guy to do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And I think that another guy that I would shout out there too is like Quan Martin, coming off kind of he's been playing really well outside of one really definitive play. Has been a guy who's
55-yard touchdown to Swift where he misses the tackle on the sideline.
Yeah, has been around the football a lot. He has the interception that's called back versus what game was that? Holy cow, that was the second game of the year.
Ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he has the fumble versus LA. Like, I think he's a guy that could maybe provide a spark there also.
Well said. All right, Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen, take command. Please subscribe to the pod, spread the word, send it to a friend, get them to listen if they've never tried it before. We're trying to grow it. You can watch us anytime you want on YouTube as well, 1067 The Fan, Team 980. We will have a post-game podcast for you on Sunday after the Cowboys and the Commanders. So come on back for that. There'll be a live pod reacting to everything that goes on the field in Dallas. This has been Take Command. Enjoy the weekend and enjoy the game.